Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a fear that pretty much everyone has to deal with at some point: public speaking. We're going to be digging into the work of Stanford lecturer Matt Abrahams to pull out the science and the strategy behind communicating with real confidence. So let's get right into it.
You know that feeling, right? That rush of anxiety, the knot that just ties itself in your stomach right before a big presentation or even just an important conversation. If you've ever felt that, trust me, you are not alone. It's a completely normal human response.
In fact, experts like Matt Abrahams are pretty sure this fear is literally hardwired into our DNA. Just think about it for a second. Way back when we were living in small tribes, getting judged by the group wasn't just embarrassing. It could mean life or death. If you got cast out, you lost everything: food, safety, the whole deal. So the next time your stomach does a flip, just remember, it's not you. It's millions of years of evolution talking.
Okay, so how in the world do we get around millions of years of our own evolution telling us to be terrified? Well, the key isn't to try and be some perfect, flawless performer. It's actually a really powerful mental shift. Stop trying to perform and start trying to connect.
I love this idea on the screen: Costco credibility. You know, we're all taught to lead with our career credibility, our title, our resume, all that stuff. But Abrams argues that's a huge mistake. Why? Because it's all about the past. Instead, he says you should offer a free sample of your value, just like when you're at Costco. Hit them with a surprising fact or a really interesting question. It immediately shows them why you're relevant, and it answers their big unspoken question: why should I be listening to you right here, right now?
So what's the biggest thing holding us back from making that authentic connection? Well, funny enough, it's our own brain. We all have this little internal judge that is constantly running, scoring our performance, critiquing every single word. And all that self-monitoring, it uses up precious mental energy that should be focused on the audience and your message.
Okay, so how do you quiet that judge? Abrahams has this brilliant little trick he borrowed from the world of improv comedy. For just 15 seconds, you point at things around you and call them something they're not. Point at a ceiling and call it a car. Point at the floor and call it a calculator. The goal here isn't to be clever or funny. It's to break that habit of constant self-judgment. It's a simple game that forces you to be spontaneous, to be present, and it trains your brain to just get out of its own way.
All right, now for the toolkit. Let's get into some really practical, really powerful techniques that you can start using today to make every single conversation you have clearer and way more engaging.
Let's be honest, our brains are terrible at remembering random lists of facts. A slide full of bullet points is usually a recipe for a zoned-out audience. So the secret is to give your information structure. And this simple 3-question framework, what, so what, now what, is incredibly effective. It forces you to turn a boring list into a logical story, which makes your message so much easier for anyone to follow, to understand, and most importantly, to act on.
Now, when you're in a one-on-one conversation, especially with someone who seems a little hesitant or quiet, don't just broadcast your own ideas. The best way to engage them is to actually draw them out. You can start by asking questions about things that are important to them. This totally shifts the focus and invites them to be a part of the conversation.
And this reveals the next step, which is like a conversational superpower. Once they answer your question, you use this simple, powerful phrase, "Tell me more." Now notice, it's not a question, it's an invitation. It gives them the floor. It shows you're actually listening, and it helps you build a genuine connection almost instantly.
But what about when things go sideways? We've all been there. You're mid-sentence and suddenly, poof, your mind is completely blank. The first thing to remember is don't panic. There's a recovery plan for that exact moment.
So first, let's talk about prevention. The number one reason people freeze up is because they're trying to memorize their talk word for word. This just puts an immense amount of pressure on your brain because you're constantly trying to remember what you plan to say versus what you're actually saying. Your goal should be a roadmap of ideas, not a rigid script.
But hey, if you do freeze, here's your plan. Step 1. Retrace your steps. Just calmly repeat the last thing you said. A lot of the time, that's all it takes to jog your memory and get the gears turning again. If that fails, you pull the final ripcord. Ask the audience a question. Something like, let's pause for a second and have you all think about how this could apply in your own work. It buys you precious seconds to reset, and to the audience, it just looks like a planned interactive moment. They'll never even know you were recovering.
So, this brings us to maybe the most important takeaway of all. Confident speaking is not some innate talent you're either born with or you're not. It is absolutely a skill. And like any other skill, it can be built with the right kind of practice.
The path to getting better follows a really simple, consistent loop. First, repetition. You can't just think your way to being a better speaker. You have to actually practice out loud. Second is reflection. Abrams suggests taking just 1 minute every evening to jot down what went well and what didn't in your communication that day. And finally, feedback. Ask people you trust for their honest opinion. That loop of practice, reflection, and feedback, that is the engine of growth.